973. I'm Iain Dale at Drive. LBC News Time. It's coming up to 4:30. News headlines with Ros Onwen.
It's emerged Met Police were told an alarm had gone off at the scene of the raid in London's Jewellery Quarter over Easter, but they didn't send a response. Up to 70 safety deposit boxes were broken into. Officers didn't arrive at the scene until Tuesday. A 13-year-old boy who pleaded guilty to murdering a man outside a block of flats has been sentenced to 11 years. 53-year-old Christopher Barry was stabbed in North London last December. Transport for London are investigating after a man was hit by a tube train at Stockwell Station this morning. The man, in his 20s, is critically ill in hospital. Eyewitnesses say he had been bending down to pick up his bag. A man who stabbed a woman to death in Walthamstow in front of a 6-year-old child has been jailed for at least 26 years. 49-year-old Lloyd Byfield had previously tried to start a relationship with Leanne Duffy. LBC weather, cloud thickening to bring some rain tonight for London and the southeast. Lows of 10 degrees. Rain spreading eastwards across all areas overnight. Occasional snow over hills in Scotland. Tomorrow, rain clearing to leave a bright day with highs of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Ros Onwen.
I'm Mark Rise in the LBC Travel Centre. The M25 has long queues clockwise between 9 and 16 Leatherhead and the M40. Heavy traffic anti-clockwise at 23 the A1M. And queues clockwise between 21A and 23 St Albans and South Mims because of a car fire. Anti-clockwise is busy from junction 24 at Potters Bar. And very long queues anti-clockwise heading for the Dartford Tunnel from junction 4 at Orpington. Uxbridge Road in Shepherd's Bush is blocked in both directions at Devonport Road with an accident. Buses are on diversion and the whole area is very congested. And if you're heading towards the Blackwall Tunnel, northbound is very slow from Woolwich Road flyover. Southbound is slow from Gilenda Street. The A2 is queuing out of town between Deptford Bridge and Prince Charles Road in Blackheath as a lorry's broken down. And in Woolwich there's an accident on the A206 Plumstead Road at Petman Crescent. Tubes are suffering this afternoon. There are severe delays on the Circle, District, Hammersmith and Victoria lines. Tickets are valid on local buses there. Minor delays on DLR and the Metropolitan line and disruption on southeastern trains between Hastings and Ashford International. Keeping London moving, your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Up your game with a free 30-day trial.
DIY just got cheaper with 50 different tiles for £10 per square metre and Ronseal 5 litre 1-coat fence life 2 for £10. So there's never been a better time to unleash the B&Q in you, because price is just the beginning. Tile offer ends 19th of April. For included tiles and prices, see DIY.com. Ronseal single price £8.92. Offer ends 7th of May.
You're only one person. So if you want to tell millions of people all the great things about your business instantly, you're going to need a megaphone and be able to travel at the speed of light. Unless we get your customers to do it for you. Reputation.com will gather positive feedback from your happy customers and amplify it. To find out more about how we can help manage, improve and protect your brand's image online, visit Reputation.com.
Come and live the London lifestyle at the Printworks Clapham Road SW9 with Galliard. Galliard Homes' stunning conversion of an Edwardian warehouse. This building simply must be seen. Less than 2 miles from Battersea Park, 1.5 from Clapham Common, and only 10 minutes by tube from Bank and Oxford Circus. Ask us how you can exchange with £2,000, get a 1-year service charge holiday, and a free furniture pack. Call Galliard on 0203 770 6300 or visit galliardhomes.com/LBC. That's galliardhomes.com/LBC. Live the London lifestyle with Galliard.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. LBC's Election Call.
Hello, a very good afternoon. It's Iain Dale at Drive. As you know, every day during this election campaign, we're giving you the chance to question a senior politician about what matters most to you. Across the weeks, we'll hear from all the main parties as Britain decides. So far this week, we've had Nick Clegg for the Lib Dems, Paul Nuttall was on earlier with Petrie from UKIP, and Labour's Tessa Jowell joined me on Wednesday. Today, it's the turn of the Conservative Cabinet Office Minister, Francis Maude. He's going to be here with me to take your questions. Give us a call now. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to speak to Francis Maude. Francis, very good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you enjoying the campaign so far? How does it compare with others that you've been involved with?
Oh, I mean, it feels unusual in that I think a lot of people hadn't until quite recently begun to think about it, and still lots. I mean, I was out on the doorstep yesterday in Ipswich, and lots of people still haven't really made their minds up. So there's still a long way to go in all of this. I think people are taking it really seriously, but I think one of the effects of there being a fixed-term parliament, when people have known what date the election is, they kind of know that they don't have to decide until nearer the time. So I think there's still a long way to go in this.
Well, there's lots to talk about over the course of the next 25 minutes or so. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You might want to ask Francis about Michael Fallon's comments about Ed Miliband, which many people think went completely over the top yesterday. Or one of the responsibilities that Francis has in the Cabinet Office is to cut the cost of government. Now, that's going to be a key part, I think, of the Conservative election manifesto. 0345 6060 973. Let's go to your first call. Andrew is in Docklands. Andrew, what's your question?
Yes, my question to Francis, has the Conservative Party lost those values that made it traditionally conservative?
What are you thinking of in particular?
Well, the idea of being for free enterprise, balanced budgets, sound currency, low taxes, instead of sort of this mixture of sort of social democracy and corporatism, which all the parties seem to have plumped for, which obviously just impacts the small and medium-sized business against everybody else. Okay,
Francis?
Well, I think we are absolutely true to that set of values. I think things change over time, but I think of myself as being very much the same Conservative as I was in the 1980s when I was part of the Margaret Thatcher government. To the extent that things have changed in my approach is that I think I've become more socially liberal, but society's become more socially liberal. This is a journey that society is always on. So, I mean, I think we are absolutely still the party that is pro-business, pro-enterprise, supporting small businesses. I've, for example, run an approach to procurement, public procurement, government procurement, which has seen the amount government spends with small and medium-sized businesses has risen from below 10% to over 25%, and by value, and that's real value. That's removing the barriers to small businesses being able to bid for and win government business. We're still a long way to go, and there's much more we can do. But this is actually the first government that has actually cut the amount of regulation. Most governments, you try vainly to stem the flow of additional regulation. We've actually cut the amount of regulation by being really rigorous about it. There's much more for us to do. We've cut the level of corporation tax to the lowest in the G7, and that's hugely beneficial as well. That's why we're attracting lots of inward investment, and we're beginning to make this yet again a country where people want to build businesses, grow businesses, put their money and their ideas and their energy to work. And
do you not think
that's what we want to
be? The cuts in the public sector could have gone a lot further over the past 5 years? The budget deficit is still £90 billion when George Osborne promised it would be eliminated during the course of this Parliament. Could you not have gone further in the last 5 years?
Well, we could have done less or we could have done more, and there were plenty of people advising us to do both less and more. And when the Eurozone went into crisis, back early in the Parliament, and obviously that had an effect on our economic growth. There were plenty of people who said we need to take our foot off the brake and start spending more. We resisted that, just as we resisted those who said we should drive the spending cuts further. What we've done, though, and there's much more we can do on this, we've done is to take out the cost of government, just like a business would. You first of all do things that take out your your own costs before you do things that affect your customers. So, this current financial year, the one just ended, we will have taken out over £20 billion of wasted cost compared with Labour's last year in government. But there's much more we can do, and we will do.
Andrew, you wanted to come back.
Yes, I mean, all of those 20 billion into 1.7 trillion economy, and about 40% of that is the government, is nothing. I mean, it's loose change, and you'd probably lose that in a rounding up.
20 billion here, 20 billion there. Pretty soon, it's serious money.
Well, it's got to be hundreds of billions, hasn't it, for it to do it. But the point is, you say that the government is helping small business. I run a small business. I don't need government help. I just need to not have all the red tape and to be left alone to actually do the best thing I can, which is providing a good service to my customers, saving them money. And that's the way the business works. When government gets involved, of course, it's throwing sort of trip hazards in front of the small and medium-sized business and giving carte blanche to the large corporates. That's not a traditional conservative value. I'm talking about the conservatism perhaps before the First World War. That would be more perhaps getting in with the classic liberal ism. That's the sort of conservatism I'm talking about.
I mean, Andrew, is your vote in doubt here?
I would say very, very much. Well, I haven't voted Conservative. I think John Major was the last time I voted Conservative. And I've run a small business since that election, actually, since '89.
So, Francis, this is a guy who would call himself a traditional Conservative. He's exactly the kind of guy you've got to win back, isn't he?
Indeed, and I've been in politics a long time, but I don't go back to before the First World War.
You do go back to John Major, though.
Yeah, sure, I do indeed. I set out some of the ways in which we are doing things to get out of the way of small business. And, and the thing which I talked about, allowing small businesses to be able to bid for and win government business, that's valuable. And I've had lots of small businesses say thank you. We had a number of small businesses which have become larger businesses because we've opened that up. We've removed the barriers. And I completely take Andrew's point, actually, that the government doesn't create business. The over 2 million jobs that have been created in the private sector over these last 5 years, the government hasn't created those. We've created the conditions in which businesses can create them. And I do think it's worth pointing out that for all the things that still make life difficult for small businesses, there are hundreds of thousands more small businesses today than there were in 2010. So there are plenty of people setting up businesses and making a success of them, so it can't all be bad. So I'd say to Andrew, stay with us, give us a chance to finish the job. There's much more we can do. There is much more spending we can take out without damaging frontline services, and we're determined to be able to do that.
OK, Andrew, thanks for that. Another Andrew in Fakenham texts to say, why is the Tory campaign so negative?
Well, I think if you take a look, I'd recommend that Andrew has a look at the most recent party election broadcast, which is relentlessly positive. It's all about the future, the best future for the British people and their families, a secure future. It is relentlessly upbeat. And if you look at YouTube and you look at the kind of store of videos and short films there are there. Yes, there are some which are attack videos. It is our obligation to point out the deficiencies of our opponents and the risks associated with the chaos that would come from them, but also to point out what the upside is, the positive vision. And today we've announced two policies which are totally positive. It's not at all about negativity.
Well, I think Andrew just has got the impression, I think a lot of people have, that it is all about attacking, and that you attack Labour, Labour attack you, and people who are floating voters, they do want a bit more of what has been called, George Bush called the vision thing, a bit of sunny uplands rhetoric and policies, and we're not really getting a lot of that, are we?
Well, I think we're getting. I think we are getting a lot. The most important thing for the future of the country is that we continue to build the economy, to have a strong recovery, to continue with the same plan that's delivered a huge amount of economic growth and can make a good living for themselves and their families. And that's the most positive thing there is. We're bound to point out that what the dangers are to that and the risks are to that if our opponents were to get their hands back on the steering wheel.
It's just the way that you do it. Let's take a call that's maybe allied to that from Grant, who's in Eltham. Grant, what would you like to ask?
Good afternoon. Yeah, firstly, just on yesterday's mentioning of Trident, it's a bit of a two-part question, really. The first part is why the Defence Minister go on about Trident, the Conservative Party, and not talking anything about defence, about ring-fencing any sort of budget or spending on defence, but they're using Trident now. And secondly, by having these personal attack on Miliband, do you not actually then lose the actual focus of the argument and any sort of cohesion he had with it?
Francis, a lot of people are very angry about this attack from Michael Fallon on Ed Miliband. It was unnecessarily personal.
Well, let me say a word about both parts of that. I mean, Grant said that we haven't been talking about Trident. I mean, we haven't particularly needed to because we are committed to this. We always have been committed to this. That's a long-standing Conservative commitment to establishing a really sustainable...
You're not speaking about Trident. You're not talking about any other part of defence. You're not talking about the next SDR. You're not talking about anything like that. You're not talking about a 2% spend to stay part of, within that NATO budget. But
okay. Well, give him a chance, Grant. It only just started. Go on, Francis.
I know, he just said that they're not doing Trident. But yeah, come on.
No, well, we haven't particularly focused on the Trident because it's a consistent policy we've been committed to for a long time, and we will remain committed to it. And so far as other defence spending is concerned, well, yes, but they've started raising questions about it, and it is worth pointing out that there are 50 or 60 Labour MPs who are absolutely die-hard opposed to Trident, to renewing Trident. So, you know, you have to have that in mind as well.
But you also have people like Chukwuemeka, who on my show not that long ago said he would actually not serve in a Labour cabinet that wasn't committed to renewing Trident. So there's sort of swings and roundabouts slightly.
Yes, there are, but it isn't quite the absolute clarity that you get with a Conservative government. And the other point that you have, I'll just deal quickly with the 2% point, because we are committed to, in the only year for which we have committed spending plans, which is the current year, committed to that being 2%. We're committed to retaining armed forces at the same level that they are now.
But why can't you commit to 2% beyond that?
Well, because we can't preempt every single part of the strategic defence and security review that will need to take place after the election, nor the whole comprehensive spending review.
But you see, people think when you say that,
you know, you can end up having to sort of commit all of it sort of on the hoof beforehand, when the right time to do it is we haven't been able to do it in government because we've been a coalition, and there would have been probably different approaches within the coalition, so it would not have been kind of constitutionally possible for us to do this in government. And so we will do what every government does, which is when you get in, you go through the whole thing from top to toe, and you balance out what the country can afford.
So why, in that
make
case,
the spending commitments there.
Why, in that case, did the Prime Minister commit Britain, United Kingdom, to a 2% spending on defence at the NATO summit in Cardiff? And when was that? Last year. What's happened between then and now? And why also are you committed to the 0.7% international aid commitment? That goes further into the future than next year. Surely if you're committed to that, you can commit to this.
Well, I mean, I do not expect there to be any serious contention about us actually, in the event, spending that 2% on defence and security. You know, there is, but there's a lot of work to do in working through the detail, and a responsible party campaigning as we are for a mandate and a majority to put our policies into action cannot commit every single detail.
No, well, let me say to you,
international developments
you were an MP during Margaret Thatcher's time. I cannot conceive of Margaret Thatcher coming on an airwave in 1983 saying Britain can't commit to 2% of defence. That goes back to what Andrew was saying, doesn't it? He wants you to be a proper Conservative government. A proper Conservative government commits to 2% defence expenditure.
Well, Ian, look, I can remember Margaret Thatcher being heavily criticised, actually, for not spending in the early days enough on defence, and you know, I remember a defence minister in Margaret's first government resigning because he felt that the spending on the Navy wasn't being protected. The thing Margaret believed in above all was you can't spend money you haven't got, you haven't earned, you have to earn it first. And so she was always in favour of real prudence in sound money.
So why did David Cameron make that commitment at that NATO conference in Cardiff last year?
Well, the commitment is one for the whole of NATO. We are spending more heavily than our partners in NATO. We are spending at that level now. And so it's, but the thing that is absolutely essential is that our partners in NATO should bring their spending up to the same level so that NATO's credibility, which has been so important in maintaining peace and security in the world, shall be sustained. So, that's the thing. We are spending that amount. We are doing this. We have got to go through a security and defence review, and we will do that rigorously and sensibly. But honestly, no one can seriously doubt the commitment of this Conservative government
the second part
to maintaining our defences.
The second part of Grant's question on Michael Fallon's attack on...
Well, let me deal with that, Grant, because I do understand the concerns about that, and I'll put it this way. Ed Miliband wanted to be leader of the Labour Party. He stabbed in the back or front, or however you like to put it, his brother David Miliband, who was the front runner and many people think would have been a better leader of the Labour Party, and he was willing to do that in order to get that position. He now aspires to be Prime Minister and to get the position of being Prime Minister, which is infinitely more powerful and which carries responsibility for the defence and security of this great country. Now, if it is the case, as we heard Nicola Sturgeon say, absolutely in terms, that their price for delivering a Labour government, which she has said is her aim. The aim of the SNP is for there to be a Labour government, a Miliband-led government in Downing Street, is that there should be no Trident. So it is perfectly legitimate.
Yes, but you know as well as I do.
Well, let me just finish the point. Perfectly legitimate for the public that someone who is willing to behave like that to get to his first position of some influence and authority may well be willing to sacrifice the country's long-term security and defence to get into Downing Street.
It's
and people should have that in mind.
It's complete fantasy because, of course, you know as well as I do the fact that she could prevent a Labour government renewing Trident, because you know as well as I do that Conservative MPs and Labour MPs would vote for it, and that would therefore mean there would be a majority.
Well, we don't know that at all because... No, we absolutely don't. And, the fact is that we already have some Labour MPs, some senior front benchers, querying whether you need the full version, the four-submarine version, that the experts are perfectly clear is necessary for continuous at-sea deterrence. So you start nibbling away at that, you start to compromise it, you start to hold it back, and before you know where you are, you've got Britain's authority, Britain's place in the world, and our ability to provide security for our people under threat.
I mean, we've got all sorts of newspaper stories today about Ed Miliband's love life. Is that relevant to his ability to be Prime Minister?
No.
Good. Grant, come back quickly. I mean, what effect did that attack on Ed Miliband have on your voting intention?
Well, my vote ain't going to change. I just think that first I'll start with that personal bit. I'll do it in reverse. I asked it. The personal bit is that I got taught many moons ago in the playground not to go down that way because it's very childish. And I think one of the big things people have with politicians at the moment and the parties is your adults a lot of the time acting very childish, tit for tat. And what they want to see is they want to see strong leadership and someone that's pushing the country in the right direction, not having these personal spats. They should actually be giving the sort of the correct information across. Which goes to my first point, is Trident at the moment, and I think this is where Fallon could have put it across a lot better, that the Conservatives are committed to it, and rightly so. He's going to spend all this money helping the defence of the Falkland Islands. And yesterday, see the Argentinian ambassador getting their knuckles wrapped. That Trident is the biggest defence we've got down there. The fact that there could be a submarine off them shores is what has kept Argentina at bay for the past 33 years.
OK, Grant.
That is what does it.
Grant, we're going to have to leave that there. Let's go to Mark in Hawley. Hello, Mark.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon to the both of you. Thanks for taking my call.
Hello, hi. We've been discussing overseas aid, and I'd like to make a statement first and ask you a couple of questions.
But very quickly, please, because we're running out of time.
Thank you. Right, we've set aside 0.7% for overseas aid. You've just discussed the public being under threat or nibbling away at resources. Policing and crime. Labour have stated that they have stated they will retain a certain number of police officers in the country. Can the Conservative government make the same assurances? Because there is a discussion that the Conservatives would like to see policing numbers fall below 100,000. And secondly, can the Conservative government make an assurance that there will be no privatisation of the functions which have currently been completed by your local neighbourhood policing teams by Serco and G4S?
Right, OK. Mark, I want to put that to you, Francis.
Well, as far as police numbers are concerned, we've actually, there were lots of predictions when we embarked on the austerity programme that crime would rise, that the police would be unable to do their work. The fact is that frontline policing has been secured and actually crime has fallen. So I think there's been a lot of scaremongering about this, but the reality is that we haven't seen a problem with policing in this country. And I'd like to pay tribute to the police for the fantastic work they do in keeping us safe. So far as privatisation of particular functions is concerned, I'm not completely clear what it is that is being asked about here by Mark in specific terms. But I think we want I see no prospect of frontline policing being done by anyone other than police officers and community support officers. But we want other functions, back office and middle office functions, to be done by whoever can do it best. I mean, we need to protect the front line. The work that I've led in government over these last 5 years has been all about taking out unnecessary costs and focusing it on the front line, buying better. We've cut the size of the civil service by 21%, like for like, over that period. Doing what all businesses would do. We got out of properties we don't need. I think a lot of police forces are doing really interesting things with getting out of property that they don't need, doing things differently.
You can't rule out a fall in police numbers over the next 5 years.
I don't have those particular facts and figures at my disposal, but what I'd say is just look at our record, which is what we have done with public services is to protect the front line, but to take out the cost behind the scenes, which have actually often made the job of the frontline policing more difficult. So we want to free up the police in the front line to do the job on which the public depends.
Right, let's move on to Evelyn, who's in Croydon. Hello, Evelyn.
Good evening, Mr. Maude. I'd like to ask you, what is the difference? Mr. Hague, to me, it appeared very underhanded and deceitful, tried to oust the Speaker of the House. So what's the difference between that and Mr. Miliband? If the other brother won, you'd have been saying the same thing. Let's be honest.
Well, Evelyn, what William did, and William is, one of the most distinguished parliamentarians of our generation.
And pretty undistinguished way to end his career in the House of Commons, though, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think it was. All he was saying is that actually it makes sense for the election of the Speaker, now that all other posts in the House of Commons, the deputy speakers, the chairs of committees, are all elected by secret ballot, to suggest that that should be done by secret ballot as well. And I don't honestly see, in a world where we expect people to be able to vote in this way, that was a particularly radical move.
It was an underhand thing to do right at the end of Parliament. Charles Walker, the head of the Public Administration Committee, was very angry because he had been completely bypassed. He said he'd been taken for a fool. It should not have been done like that, should it?
Well, you can argue this back and forth, and the truth is that this was a sensible move to take, and at some stage it will happen. And the arguments for having a secret ballot were perfectly clear and straightforward, and I voted for it. And I would do again.
You're leaving Parliament. You can give your honest view of John Bercow now. What is it?
Well, I've been a long-term friend of John Bercow's. I went to his wedding. I think his role as a Speaker, he needs to make sure he is relentlessly fair, by which I don't mean political impartiality, but he needs to make sure. I think the point Charles Walker made in his short speech was that John Bercow has quite a temper. And he needs to be able to control that temper, otherwise he will bring the office of Speaker into disrepute.
Final question from Richard, who's in Enfield. Hello, Richard.
Hi there. Yeah. Hi there. What are red lines policies on with the Tories in a coalition? Sort of, you're going to have to haggle, aren't you? So, what policies are not up for debate, basically?
Okay, Francis.
Well, look, we're only 20 or so seats short of a majority at the moment, and we're campaigning vigorously for a majority. And lots of people are speculating about what the outcome of this election will be. I don't know, you don't know, none of us know, but on May the 8th
we can all have a pretty good guess, though, and at that most people guess that there will be a hung parliament. Now, in that event, let me give you one example. An EU referendum in 2017, is that a red line for the Conservatives?
Look, the Prime Minister has absolutely said that is a red line. He's committed to there being a referendum if he's Prime Minister.
So in any coalition negotiations, that wouldn't be up for negotiation?
He said that at the time that he made the speech committing to having a referendum. But look, you can speculate about what the shape of Parliament will be, what House of Commons will be. There are all sorts of possibilities. And you cannot expect any politicians to set out in detail at this stage what their negotiating position would be in all of those circumstances. So I would just make the point again: we're quite close to having an overall majority. The campaigning I've done has showed lots of people on the doorstep saying, they don't want Ed Miliband as Prime Minister. That they are confident that the Conservatives have had a good plan which they want to see through to the end. Okay. So I'm confident that we can win that majority.
And you're leaving the House of Commons. What's next for you?
Well, I've absolutely no idea.
Bit of ermine, maybe?
Well, these are matters well beyond my care.
What's your most?
But I've had a wonderful time in the House of Commons. I've done it for 27 years, on and off, with a break, I don't regret leaving, but I did have one pang when I stood in the House of Commons for the last time as a fully elected member. And I did just reflect a bit that this is the most amazing place where some truly great people have aspired to be members and have done amazing, really influenced the course of history. And it's the most extraordinary privilege to be allowed to stand there and sit there with the authority of having been elected by your fellow citizens. And for that, I'm truly grateful.
Well, Francis Maude, thank you very much for joining us on LBC's Election Call. This is LBC. It's 5 o'clock.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 5 o'clock, Met Police say they were alerted to an alarm going off at the scene of the burglary in London's jewellery quarter over Easter, but did not respond. It's believed up to £200 million worth of valuables could have been taken, making it one of the UK's biggest ever heists.